Test File 3. Listening. Section 2. You will hear a radio presenter talking about safety in the countryside. You now have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 15.
This week on The Great Escape, we're in the beautiful hills of Grimswick. With summer fast approaching, many of you will be thinking about weekends away in places just like this. And there's no reason why you can't have a very safe and enjoyable experience out here in the wilds. But of course, there are dangers lurking in the countryside, often from the least expected sources. Let's look at some of them. You'll find beautiful lakes out here in the country which can be very inviting on a hot day. But there can be all sorts of dangers with open water, especially unexpected objects under the surface. However, walkers wanting to cool down are not the greatest cause of accidents. Most of those who die in water don't mean to go in. They fall as a result of running or cycling too close to the water. If that happens to your friend, don't dive in, even if it's a child you think you can drag out. Try to offer them a stick or lie flat as you reach out to them. It's always nice to stop and have a picnic in a place like this. But what dangers could possibly be linked to a picnic? Well, what about that glass bottle that you finished with? You won't find many bins in the countryside, so it's tempting to leave them rather than carry them back in your heavy packs. Remember, however, that aside from being a danger to walkers, glass can concentrate sunlight and accidentally start fires. Once started, they can be very difficult to put out. Animals are another attractive feature of rural areas, but local farmers have also reported an increasing number of incidents with farm animals. Taking dogs with you, for example, is not a good idea. Often it's your dog who will come off worse in a confrontation with cows or horses. Humans have to be careful too. Although you might want to go as quickly as you can through the field, you should avoid walking between cows and their young. Mothers will chase you off if they feel you're a threat to their family. Go around their territory. Of course, if you're walking longer distances, there's a lot you'll need to think about. It's important to remember that shops and medical services are not as close, and you'll be spending a long time away from civilization. So what you set out with is all you'll have to help you deal with any emergency. There are lots of things that some people like to take, like survival blankets or fire starters, but it's the basics you need to remember. Make sure your phones are fully charged before you set out. And while keeping sweets with you may not be a good idea generally, you'll be glad of them here. Calories can give you much needed energy for outdoor activities and help you stay warm too. Clothing is very important, and you can forget fashion. Lightweight trousers are a must, and you'll need something to keep the hot sun off your head and the rest of you. Whatever you wear on the top half, make sure it has long sleeves and a collar.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Your biggest enemy will be the weather. The rain, for example, will make your maps quite unreadable. And then there's the cold. It can still get pretty cold at this time of year. In fact, the owner of the local hotel was telling me about a young couple who got into severe difficulties here just last week. They were passionate walkers, apparently, and had come here on honeymoon. They had checked the weather forecast and seen that it was going to be a nice day, so they set out after lunch. They had plenty of water and all the equipment you could need, including good strong boots and hiking poles. But it's often the basic things you forget. At around 4 in the afternoon, on the last leg of their journey, the young lady twisted her ankle, which slowed down their progress, and it started to get dark before they could make it back. It was then that they realised that their torch battery was fading and they hadn't packed a spare. Walking in complete darkness is simply impossible in these hills. You have to be able to see where you're putting every footstep, so they decided to stop and stay where they were for the night. With clear skies and no tent, they quickly got very cold. The young man was able to jump up and down to keep warm, but with an ankle injury, his wife could do very little to fight the cold. By the time dawn broke, she had started suffering from hypothermia and couldn't walk. Fortunately, the hotel manager noticed they hadn't returned and alerted the emergency services. The rest of the trip was spent at the local hospital, but they were still glad they'd stopped. Just 10 metres from where they spent the night, there had been a cliff edge with a 30-metre drop the other side.
That is the end of section 2. In the test, you will now have 30 seconds to check your answers.